Inside a powerful nuclear warship, an impossibly cramped galley actively cooks a staggering 450,000 calories every single day. This is the core of modern naval endurance. Deep sea survival relies entirely on the psychological warfare waged through extreme culinary logistics. How exactly do elite military chefs flawlessly sustain 135 isolated sailors while evading hostile sonar in total silence? Let's breach the classified bulkheads and decode the most dangerous kitchen on Earth. Right now, at this exact, singular, breathless very moment, 800 feet beneath the surface of the North Atlantic, the ocean exerts a crushing pressure of 356 pounds per square inch against the HY 100 high-yield steel hull of a $3.4 billion Virginia-class fast-attack submarine. Outside, it is a lethal, lightless void where a single microscopic fracture means instant obliteration. Deep inside, an E5 Culinary Specialist second class is meticulously checking the precise core temperature of a 15-pound roasted prime rib. Welcome to the most unforgiving culinary environment in human history. We are talking about feeding 135 heavily armed sailors inside a submerged pressure capsule traveling at classified speeds exceeding 25 knots. This is not a standard galley. This is a 120 square foot titanium reinforced combat kitchen. It is literally the size of a standard parking space. Have you ever tried to maneuver around two other people in a tiny apartment kitchen? Now imagine doing that while the entire room abruptly pitches into a 20-degree tactical dive to evade simulated hostile sonar. This brings us to the core reality of modern naval strategy. The true bottleneck of underwater endurance is not the S9G pressurized water reactor. It is not the oxygen generators. It is human physiology, and specifically the logistical miracle of how the U.S. Navy cooks, sustains, and psychologically fortifies its elite submariners through high-stakes, deep ocean culinary operations. Every single square inch of this galley is engineered for absolute survival and maximum efficiency. The fryers are constructed at an astonishing 14 inches deep. Why? Because when a 7,800-ton submarine executes an emergency blow or violent evasive maneuver, boiling oil cannot be permitted to become a localized weapon against the crew. Every oven features heavy-duty military-grade latches. Every cutting board is secured. These culinary specialists operate in conditions that would cause a Michelin-starred chef to have a nervous breakdown within an hour. They are executing precision logistics, managing a rotating inventory of 18,000 pounds of frozen proteins and dense provisions loaded through a 26-inch hatch. They work in continuous, punishing 12-hour shifts. The heat in the galley routinely hits 100 degrees Fahrenheit when all gimbaled ovens are firing. Yet, the mission demands utter perfection. A single foodborne illness spreading through a sealed, recycled air environment of a submarine would neutralize a multi-billion-dollar strategic asset faster than an enemy torpedo. This is the absolute peak of the logistical operation. It is a terrifying, high-stakes dance of sharpened steel blades, open fire, and scalding boiling water while operating in a severely restricted, three-dimensional, gravity-shifting space. When the dreaded general quarters alarm violently blares through the corridors, the galley absolutely does not shut down. The exhausted crew still urgently needs to consume high-quality calories to maintain peak cognitive capability. The critical mission simply never stops for anything. The sheer physical dedication required to flawlessly execute this grueling, dangerous performance, day after grueling day, month after exhausting month, without ever seeing the glorious sun, is nothing short of legendary. If you truly want to understand the raw, unyielding mechanical brilliance and the iron-will human endurance that powers America's silent service, you deeply need to see exactly what happens next. Please aggressively hit that like button, subscribe to the channel right now, and immediately turn on notifications, because we are about to entirely breach the heavily classified logistics of deep-sea survival operations. But how exactly do these truly brave American underwater warriors manage to keep 135 elite sailors fully combat ready with completely fresh, incredibly nutritious meals after 90 long, exhausting days completely submerged. Thousands of cold, dark, treacherous miles from the very nearest friendly forward operational supply port. The answer begins at the concrete pier of Naval Submarine Base, New London, long before the heavy mooring lines are slipped. Loading a Virginia-class fast-attack submarine is a brutal feat of spatial geometry and extreme physical endurance. Every single ounce of vital sustenance must be manually hauled down steep vertical ladders through a 26-inch weapons loading hatch. It is a grueling human chain of sweating sailors passing literal tons of dense cargo directly into the dark, echoing belly of the titanium beast. Let us aggressively break down the terrifying mathematics of combat survival. A deployed crew of 135 sailors requires an astronomical 18,000 pounds of frozen proteins and 20,000 pounds of dry goods for a standard 90-day classified patrol. The mind-bending reality is that this mountain of calories is weaponized into every available microscopic void of the high-pressure hull. Heavy number 10, industrial cans of green beans and crushed tomatoes are tightly stacked underneath the lower deck plates, creating false steel floors that sonar technicians literally walk on every single day. Boxes of dehydrated potatoes are wedged tightly behind classified acoustic consoles and crammed perilously close to 21-foot-long Mark 48 advanced capability torpedoes. The culinary specialists must maintain a flawlessly updated mental map of this subterranean grocery store. What specific quantities does this tiny team actually output every single day without a single moment of fail? They relentlessly cook 200 pounds of raw meat, expertly bake 25 fresh loaves of bread, and meticulously sheet out 500 chocolate chip cookies. They must physically extract these massive quantities from hidden voids while operating on just 3 hours of sleep. Here's the mandatory thesis statement that most civilian military analysts completely misunderstand. We must instantly stop viewing submarine food strictly as basic biological fuel, and absolutely start recognizing it as a highly calibrated psychological combat support system. The United States Navy deliberately engineers its provisioning matrix to fiercely combat a terrifying phenomenon known as sensory deprivation syndrome. When you are permanently trapped inside a vibrating steel tube with zero natural light, heavily recycled artificial air, and identical battleship-gray bulkheads. Your biological sensory inputs are violently starved. How do you fiercely fight this invisible, morale-crushing enemy in the abyss? You aggressively fight it with extreme, explosive flavor profiles. The galley cooks heavily seasoned, highly aromatic dishes to deliberately shock the crew's dormant nervous systems. Furthermore, in an extreme tactical environment where the sun literally never rises and exhausting 18-hour shifts blur into a continuous, unrelenting cycle, meals become the only functioning mechanical clock. The printed menu strictly dictates human reality. Have you ever completely lost track of days in a windowless office? If the galley cooks thick, hand-tossed pepperoni pizza with perfectly blistered crusts, the crew subconsciously knows it is definitely Saturday night. If they are aggressively slicing into perfectly pink, slow-roasted prime rib and serving it alongside 50 pounds of flawlessly seasoned garlic mashed potatoes, it is unmistakably Sunday. This rigorous culinary schedule prevents temporal disorientation, a severe psychological condition that can dangerously degrade a fire control technician's critical reaction time. They also cook massive pans of scratch-made lasagna and 40 pounds of shrimp for special morale events. If the galley fails, the crew's ironclad mental fortitude instantly fractures. The absolute climax of this grueling logistical war inevitably occurs around day 85 of a classified deployment. The fresh produce vanished 2 long months ago. The inventory is critically depleted. Physical exhaustion is absolutely peaking, and the crushing deep sea pressure is immense. Yet, the culinary specialists must somehow miraculously transform the desolate, frost-bitten bottom of the freezer and a handful of dehydrated ingredients into a 5-star morale victory. Through sheer tactical willpower and unmatched culinary mastery, they conjure an impeccable surf and turf dinner from the absolute void. They literally hold the fighting spirit of the entire multi-billion-dollar warship in their blistered, permanently scarred hands. But orchestrating a massive culinary masterpiece at crushing depths is merely half the battle. How exactly do you violently chop 50 pounds of dense root vegetables and continuously operate heavy industrial stand mixers when the absolute survival of the submarine depends on making zero detectable acoustic noise? The absolute terror of submarine warfare is dictated by a single, unforgiving law of deep ocean physics. In the crushing density of salt water, sound waves travel at a blistering 4,950 feet per second, nearly 5 times faster than in the air you are currently breathing. When a nuclear-powered Virginia-class fast-attack submarine enters condition ultra-quiet, a single 8-ounce steel ladle dropped onto a titanium deck plate doesn't just make a noise. It violently generates a broadband acoustic transient spike that instantly illuminates the multi-billion-dollar warship on the passive sonar displays of deadly hostile hunter-killer submarines lurking up to 50 nautical miles away. How exactly do you aggressively operate a massive industrial kitchen without transmitting lethal mechanical vibrations directly into the surrounding ocean? The astonishing engineering answer is complete structural decoupling. The entire 120 square foot galley absolutely does not touch the submarine's primary HY100 steel hull framework. The massive 400-pound gimbaled ovens and hazardous deep fryers are meticulously suspended on highly classified, heavy-duty elastomeric polyurethane shock mounts and braided wire rope isolators. This advanced acoustic architecture essentially creates a floating room within a room, designed to flawlessly absorb the violent, low-frequency kinetic energy of a fiercely operating commercial stand mixer before it reaches the deadly ocean water. But the world's most advanced acoustic engineering is completely useless without the ironclad discipline of the American sailor. During these nerve-shredding evasion maneuvers, the culinary specialists must radically alter their entire physical reality. They instantly abandon their traditional heavy stainless steel spatulas and aggressively switch to a specialized arsenal of high-temperature silicone and carbon composite culinary tools. Can you realistically imagine the terrifying pressure of trying to rapidly scrape 100 heavily seared chicken breasts off a scorching 400-degree griddle without letting a single utensil loudly strike the hardened metal surface? Every single mixing bowl is permanently locked down onto thick, quarter-inch rubber dampening mats to violently kill any resonant acoustic ringing. Verbal communication in this high-stakes environment is violently restricted to a strict 40 decibel threshold, barely a harsh whisper. The exhausted cooks absolutely do not shout aggressive timing orders over the roaring atmospheric ventilation fans. They execute a highly choreographed, terrifyingly silent ballet of rapid hand signals and intense eye contact to flawlessly coordinate the simultaneous boiling of 40 pounds of dense pasta and the precise slicing of 80 pounds of roasted meats. The ambient temperature frequently spikes past 105 degrees Fahrenheit during these silent runs, yet they must move with the delicate precision of a master watchmaker. They literally use their own muscular bodies as biological shock absorbers, executing agonizingly slow, controlled physical transfers to severely muffle the heavy impact of extracting frozen provisions from the cramped freezer voids. But the absolute heart-stopping climax of this acoustic warfare occurs when catastrophe strikes in the abyss. Imagine the submarine is rigged for maximum stealth, violently executing a 30-degree evasion dive at a classified depth of 1,200 feet, when a malfunctioning thermostat pushes a deep fryer past its 600-degree flashpoint. A catastrophic grease fire violently erupts in the desperately cramped 120 square foot space. Thick, blinding. Toxic black smoke instantly floods the compartment, violently choking the available oxygen. The immense crushing pressure of 530 psi outside means there is absolutely no escape, and a hull-breaching explosion is merely seconds away. In any civilian restaurant, there is immediate screaming, absolute panic, and uncoordinated chaos. But these are elite American underwater warriors, and their reaction is nothing short of a tactical miracle. They instantly execute complex damage control protocols in absolute Dead calm, terrifying silence, without dropping a single heavy tool or uttering a single panicked syllable. One cook rapidly secures the main 440-volt electrical breakers, while another aggressively deploys targeted aqueous film-forming foam suppressants. They manually isolate the heavy ventilation valves in total darkness, violently choking the fire of oxygen before it can spread to the adjacent torpedo room. They aggressively neutralize a lethal, ship-killing threat, clear the toxic smoke, and miraculously, the 135 exhausted sailors still receive their vital caloric intake precisely on schedule. These men literally transform extreme logistical constraints into a crushing display of American maritime superiority. But as the white geopolitical chessboard rapidly shifts and our global adversaries aggressively expand their heavily armed underwater fleets, the United States Navy is already engineering the next massive leap in deep sea survival. How exactly are American industrial designers currently forging the completely mind-blowing $15 billion Columbia-class nuclear submarines to keep these elite culinary warriors operating flawlessly deep into the 2080s? The upcoming USS District of Columbia SSBN 826 represents a staggering $15.03 billion investment in absolute underwater deterrence, measuring 560 feet long and displacing 20,810 tons. It will be the largest ballistic submarine ever constructed by the United States of America. Unlike the Ohio class, these apex predators feature a life-of-ship nuclear reactor core engineered to operate continuously for 42 years without a single refueling overhaul. This creates a massive engineering paradox. How do you construct a high-volume combat kitchen to endure 4 decades of violent hull compression and corrosive salt air degradation without catastrophic failure? American naval architects at General Dynamics are not merely upgrading stainless steel ovens, they are now completely redefining deep-sea spatial survival architecture. The Columbia-class galley matrices are forged using classified aerospace-grade titanium, composites, and modular, rapid swap electronic logic boards. If a 400-pound refrigeration compressor catastrophically burns out at a classified depth of 1,000 feet, culinary specialists will not need a civilian dry dock. They will execute a terrifyingly precise hardware swap in exactly 15 minutes, guaranteeing zero interruption to the vital 450,000 calorie daily pipeline. This relentless pursuit of logistical perfection precisely separates the United States Navy from every other allied and hostile maritime strike force. Consider the publicized 2024 deployment crisis, where Allied Royal Navy Vanguard-class submarines reportedly suffered severe food rationing, forcing elite sailors to share emergency rations during extended deterrent patrols. While foreign forces dangerously struggle to feed exhausted crews, American submarines continue seamlessly cooking absolutely flawless 145-degree medium rare prime rib and hand-tossed pizzas. In a prolonged 120-day deep ocean standoff, absolute psychological dominance firmly belongs to the Fed crew. The astonishing billion-dollar innovations aggressively forged in these claustrophobic, heavily armed steel tubes do not remain permanently classified. The extreme vacuum-sealed preservation techniques and ultra-efficient, zero-waste workflow matrices pioneered by these warriors actively shape global civilian survival networks. Modern emergency response organizations like FEMA directly utilize the dense caloric algorithms originally developed by the Armed Services Recipe Service. When a rapid response field hospital efficiently feeds 500 critically injured trauma patients in a devastated hurricane zone, they are leveraging the logistical genius of the American submariner. Strip away the advanced acoustic mounts, the 42-year perpetual reactor core, and the apocalyptic payload of Trident 2D5 missiles. The absolute climax of this billion-dollar weapon system happens exactly on day 110 of a grueling deterrence patrol, when sheer physical exhaustion threatens to shatter the crew's sanity. The E5 Culinary Specialist, operating on just 3 hours of severely fractured, unrestful sleep, stares down an empty freezer. Through sheer iron willpower, he miraculously transforms the final scraps of dehydrated rations into a spectacular, morale-saving feast, In that breathtaking moment, a 22-year-old kid literally holds the fragile psychological fighting spirit of the most destructive warship in human history squarely on his blistered shoulders. They do not fire the devastating Mark 48 advanced capability torpedoes, nor do they program the apocalyptic nuclear launch codes. Make absolutely no mistake, these elite culinary warriors are the undeniable iron heartbeat of American global deterrence. Every single flawlessly seasoned, high-protein meal served in that fiercely vibrating titanium box is a profound act of brotherhood and a definitive statement of human endurance against the crushing abyss. They forge unbreakable tactical unit cohesion, transforming 155 isolated sailors into a single, lethal combat organism that never sleeps and never ever surrenders. The next time you sit down to a comfortable meal in a brightly lit civilian restaurant, take one silent second to remember the elite Navy cooks operating in the lightless void. They are fighting the ocean's crushing 500 psi pressure, armed with high-temp silicone and unyielding resolve to keep the free world safe. If the sheer iron will and unmatched tactical mastery of these underwater culinary specialists completely blew your mind, it is time to officially enlist in our community. Aggressively smash that like button to honor the unsung heroes of the submarine galley. Hit subscribe and immediately turn on notifications right now, because we have dozens more heavily classified stories of absolute American military dominance just waiting to be declassified.